The calm façade of Buckingham Palace shattered overnight when whispers of Prince Andrew's veiled threats began echoing through its corridors. For years, William had remained silent, guarded, loyal, unshakable. But this time, something snapped. As Andrew's words reached the future king's ears, they weren't just insults. They were a declaration of war within the royal bloodline itself. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For generations, silence had been the crown's greatest weapon. Problems were hidden behind palace walls, conflicts handled quietly, and family disputes buried under ceremony and protocol. But this time, the silence had turned into something dangerous, something that could no longer be contained. The tension between William and Andrew had been simmering for years, quietly intensifying since the moment Charles ascended to the throne. Andrew, stripped of his titles, exiled from royal duties, and publicly shamed, had grown resentful. To him, William wasn't just the next in line. He was a symbol of everything Andrew had lost: respect, power, and relevance. Behind closed doors, Andrew began plotting his own form of revenge. He watched the monarchy from the sidelines, humiliated yet burning with determination to regain influence. Those close to him said he had become a man possessed, clinging to the belief that he still held cards the monarchy couldn't afford to see played. Rumors spread of secret conversations, coded letters, and whispers that Andrew might have proof of something that could shake the very foundation of the royal image. To most, they were just rumors, but to William, they felt like echoes of a threat too dangerous to ignore. Andrew's resentment had turned him into a shadow lingering at the edge of the royal circle. He was the ghost of the past, unwanted yet impossible to exorcise. His frustration grew each time he saw William and Catherine stepping confidently into the limelight, embodying everything he believed had been stolen from him. And while the world celebrated the young couple's grace, Andrew was making quiet moves in the dark. Friends of the Duke described him as restless, meeting individuals with questionable motives, dropping cryptic remarks about truths that the crown wouldn't dare reveal. Each word added weight to the sense of unease spreading through the palace corridors. Then came the warning, sharp, direct, and chilling. It wasn't just a whisper this time. Andrew, through a mutual confidant, had hinted at exposing a royal secret if he wasn't reinstated. The message reached William like a dagger, disguised as a letter. It was no longer about family pride. It was about survival. The royal institution had faced scandals before, but this one felt personal. It wasn't a journalist or an outsider making threats, it was one of their own. The betrayal cut deeper because it carried the weight of shared blood and history. Palace aides described the atmosphere as electrically charged. Staff moved carefully, conversations halted when certain names were mentioned, and every call was double-checked before being answered. Something inside those centuries-old walls had shifted. The calm that once defined royal dignity had been replaced by suspicion and dread. Even the corridors that had witnessed the monarchy's greatest triumphs now seemed to hum with quiet anxiety. Every eye turned to William, waiting to see how he would respond. Would he follow tradition and stay silent, or would he finally break the centuries-old rule of never confronting family disputes in public? But the weight of Andrew's words was too much to ignore. It wasn't only about a personal slight, it was about protecting the very integrity of the crown. William knew that ignoring such a threat would only embolden Andrew, allowing him to spread poison in the shadows. The balance between restraint and reaction was crumbling, and William's patience, tested beyond its limits, was nearing its end. The future king, known for his calm composure, was about to show a side the world had never seen before. The side that emerges when loyalty is betrayed by blood. Because sometimes, silence doesn't preserve peace, it breeds rebellion. And what Andrew thought was a private warning would soon spiral into a public disaster, because William's patience had finally reached its breaking point. Behind the polished smiles and formal handshakes, Andrew's fury had been boiling for years. Stripped of titles, reputation in tatters, and locked out of royal duties, he felt humiliated. But few knew the depth of his bitterness, or the dangerous alliances he was beginning to form behind palace walls. For Andrew, disgrace had become a prison. The corridors he once walked with authority now seemed to mock him with their silence. Every family appearance without him, every photograph where he was absent, deepened his resentment. He saw himself not as the villain of his downfall, but as the victim of a cold and calculated betrayal led by his own blood. In his mind, Charles and William weren't just enforcing royal order, they were conspiring to erase his legacy entirely. The humiliation was unbearable, and it ignited a dangerous conviction within him. If he couldn't reclaim his place with honor, he would reclaim it through fear. Late into the night, Andrew began making quiet but deliberate moves. He reached out to influential friends, business allies, and old connections, people who owed him favors or craved the power his last name still carried. In cryptic calls and discreet messages, he hinted at knowledge only a royal could possess. "There are truths buried deeper than anyone dares to admit," he once reportedly said to a confidant, "and if they push me any further, the world will hear every one of them." These words weren't mere outbursts, they were veiled promises of revenge. Each conversation added another piece to a growing puzzle of deceit that only he could control. His claim was bold. He said he held letters, files, and confidential documents that could shatter the monarchy's image if released. To those around him, it sounded like bluster. But to the palace, it was a chilling threat. What if he truly did possess something? What if, out of desperation, he was willing to use it? The mere suggestion was enough to send ripples of anxiety through the royal household. Aides whispered that Andrew had become unpredictable, his temper sharper, his tone more dangerous. What began as whispers of discontent now carried the weight of real menace. Within the palace, fear began to grow. Staff who once spoke casually about him now avoided his name altogether. Some described his presence as unsettling, his eyes carrying a strange mix of grief and vengeance. The royal aides closest to Charles reportedly urged caution, knowing that Andrew's unpredictable behavior could erupt into public scandal at any moment. Every word, every movement, seemed calculated to remind them that he was not done fighting, that even without his titles, he could still strike where it hurt the most. Yet amidst this turmoil, one figure watched silently: Queen Camilla. She knew more than she admitted. There were whispers that she had been informed of Andrew's veiled threats and secret meetings, yet chose to remain silent. Perhaps she believed ignoring him would calm the storm, or perhaps she understood that confrontation would only fuel his anger. Her quiet observation added another layer of mystery. Was she protecting the family's image, or allowing the fire to spread until it consumed itself? Behind every royal smile at public engagements, a private tension thickened. The walls of the palace, once symbols of strength, now felt like the boundaries of a battlefield. Andrew's fury wasn't fading, it was evolving. What began as humiliation had transformed into something darker. A hunger to expose, to ruin, to reclaim control through chaos. And in his twisted sense of justice, bringing down the institution that had turned its back on him was the only way to restore his power. And as the whispers grew louder, William, usually the symbol of control, was about to step into a battle that would test every royal boundary he had ever respected. He had endured public scandals, family betrayals, and endless scrutiny. But nothing prepared William for this. When Andrew's threats reached him not as rumors, but as direct attacks, it ignited a fire the royal family had never seen before. For years, William had lived in the delicate space between personal pain and public expectation. The weight of duty pressed upon him daily, every word measured, every gesture dissected. He had learned to bury emotion beneath diplomacy, to respond to chaos with calm. But Andrew's defiance struck something deeper, something more personal. This was not about protocol or royal politics anymore. It was about betrayal within the very bloodline he had sworn to protect. Those who knew William best said the silence around him grew heavy in those days. His anger wasn't loud, it was focused, simmering, and dangerous in its restraint. Behind closed doors, Catherine saw the change before anyone else. She understood the toll the crown's burden took on her husband, the quiet frustration of leading a family still divided by ego and old wounds. When the first public hint of Andrew's veiled accusations surfaced, it was Catherine who urged caution. She reminded William that the monarchy had survived not by reacting to scandal, but by outlasting it. Yet even she could see that this was different. This wasn't gossip, it was war disguised as whispers. William's patience, once unshakable, was beginning to crack under the weight of deceit. The final blow came unexpectedly, in the form of a message, leaked to the press, a cryptic statement implying royal hypocrisy and corruption, with a tone that only one person would dare use. It was cruel, calculated, and unmistakably meant for William. It mocked his integrity, insinuating that the new generation of royals was no better than those before them. To the public, it was a scandal. To William, it was an unforgivable act of treachery. The moment he read those words, his decision was made. Silence was no longer a sign of strength, it had become an accomplice to betrayal. In a rare show of defiance, William convened a private meeting with senior advisors and palace aides. His voice was firm, his tone uncharacteristically cold. "We've been silent too long," he said, "and silence enables betrayal." Those 6 words echoed through the palace halls like a thunderclap. For decades, the royal family had survived by mastering discretion, but William knew that hiding behind formality only allowed darkness to fester. If Andrew wanted to drag their family's honor through the mud, then he would meet a version of William the monarchy had never known, a leader unafraid to defend his crown. The palace moved swiftly under William's direction. Every word of the forthcoming statement was weighed with surgical precision, measured enough to maintain dignity, yet sharp enough to deliver its message. The response was not direct, but its meaning was unmistakable. Loyalty was no longer optional, and betrayal would no longer be tolerated. When the statement reached the press, it ignited a storm. Media outlets dissected every syllable, searching for hidden meaning, while insiders described it as the most assertive move made by a royal in decades. To the world, it was William stepping into his own as a leader. To those within the palace, it was a warning, a declaration that the future king would no longer remain silent while his family tore itself apart. The public rallied behind him, admiring his composure and courage. The applause, another reality, was unfolding. William's words, though powerful, had struck the one nerve Andrew could never forgive. For the first time in years, Andrew realized that he was no longer feared. He was being challenged. His pride would not allow that to stand. What began as veiled threats was about to become open warfare within the royal circle. But William's moment of truth didn't silence Andrew. It enraged him, setting off a chain of events no one could control. Andrew had always been unpredictable, but this was different. His threat wasn't whispered behind closed doors. It was delivered straight into the heart of the monarchy. Documents, letters, and recordings, he claimed to have them all. The question wasn't if he would use them, but when. The moment his intentions became known, panic gripped the palace. Andrew's alleged blackmail attempt wasn't just reckless, it was catastrophic. Insiders whispered that he possessed confidential correspondence, handwritten notes, and even recordings from private royal meetings that could irreparably damage the monarchy's carefully guarded image. It wasn't clear how much truth there was behind these claims, but the possibility alone was enough to send shockwaves through both Buckingham and Windsor. For the first time in decades, the royal family found itself under siege, not from the press, but from within. Behind closed doors, damage control meetings intensified. Buckingham Palace became a war room of strategy and secrecy, where William, Anne, and the senior aides debated the next steps. Every word was weighed, every move scrutinized. The fear was not simply about exposure, it was about survival. If Andrew's claims proved even partially true, the monarchy's credibility would shatter. The public, already weary of royal scandal, might not forgive another betrayal. Meanwhile, at Windsor, Andrew seemed to relish the chaos he had unleashed. He portrayed himself as the wronged prince, demanding not exile, but reinstatement complete with status, privilege, and the financial security that came with it. His demands were outrageous, but his tone was coldly calculated. In the midst of this turmoil, King Charles's health began to visibly deteriorate. The stress of the scandal, compounded by years of private burden, weighed heavily on him. Those close to the king described sleepless nights and long hours locked in conversation with advisors. Every rumor, every headline seemed to chip away at his composure. To him, this wasn't merely a crisis of image, it was a betrayal by his own brother. The same man he had defended, forgiven, and quietly supported was now holding the family hostage under the guise of revenge. It was a cruel reminder that power, when intertwined with pride, can destroy even the strongest of bonds. Sensing the gravity of the moment, the Queen's old advisors, men and women who had served under Elizabeth's reign, were quietly summoned back into the fold. They had weathered storms before, from constitutional crises to media warfare, and their counsel now carried new urgency. Together, they urged William and Princess Anne to take control of the situation before it spiraled further. They reminded them that the monarchy had survived because it had adapted, but survival now required something more, a public show of unity, even if the family behind the façade was breaking apart. Yet the outside world could smell blood. Leaks began surfacing in the press, each more damaging than the last. Reports hinted at royal cover-ups, mysterious payments, and secret agreements buried under decades of silence. Whether true or fabricated, the narrative was spreading faster than the palace could contain it. Journalists pounced on every new detail, and speculation turned into scandal overnight. Each headline widened the rift, painting a picture of a monarchy crumbling under its own secrets. Through it all, William watched the chaos unfold with quiet determination. He knew the stakes. This was no longer just about reputation, but about the future of the crown itself. Andrew's threat had shattered the illusion of royal invincibility, revealing the vulnerability hidden beneath centuries of grandeur. And as the family stood at the edge of collapse, one thing became clear. William's next move would not only decide the fate of his uncle, but the integrity of the monarchy itself. The threats sent shockwaves through the monarchy, but William's next move would change everything and expose the cracks hidden beneath the royal gold. As the royal storm raged, Catherine became the quiet force behind William's every move. Fear that the man she loved might destroy himself trying to defend a crumbling legacy, and that Andrew's threat could drag their children into a scandal that would scar them forever. She had seen William shoulder the monarchy's burdens alone, carrying both his father's frailty and his brother's rebellion on his back. Yet now, the fury inside him was unlike anything she had ever seen. It wasn't just about duty, it was about betrayal, pride, and the unbearable pain of watching the family he was meant to lead descend into chaos. Catherine's influence, though rarely visible, shaped every decision William made during that dark chapter. Behind the grandeur of royal protocol, she was his voice of reason, urging caution when anger pushed him toward confrontation. In private, their conversations grew longer and heavier. She reminded him that every word spoken by a royal becomes history, and once released, it can never be recalled. "You are not just defending yourself," she told him softly one night. "You're defending the legacy of your children." Her words carried a quiet authority that only he could truly understand. The dignity she embodied, grace under fire, strength under scrutiny, became his anchor amid the chaos. But the deeper the scandal cut, the more she saw the toll it took on him. The sleepless nights, the quiet pacing, the haunted look of a man torn between justice and restraint, it terrified her. She knew that defending the crown could come at a cost no throne could compensate for. Peace of mind. And so, Catherine did what few ever knew. She reached out for guidance. In a rare move, she requested a private audience with Princess Anne. The meeting was discreet, far from the public eye, but its significance would shape the monarchy's next move. Anne, known for her bluntness and unmatched loyalty to the crown, listened without judgment. Catherine spoke of her fears of the family's crumbling unity, of William's growing exhaustion, and of the dangerous path Andrew's defiance had carved. Anne's response was simple, but it carried the weight of royal wisdom. "Once you speak, you can never take it back." Those words struck Catherine deeply. They were a warning wrapped in truth, a reminder that power, once asserted, leaves scars that never fade. Anne had seen it happen before, and now she feared history was repeating itself. Returning from that conversation, Catherine's resolve hardened. She understood that William's silence could no longer protect them, but his words had to do more than retaliate. They had to restore faith in the monarchy itself. She began preparing him emotionally for what lay ahead, ensuring that when he finally spoke, it would not be out of anger, but purpose. The world would see not a wounded prince, but a future king reclaiming his voice. Her symbolic act of unity came quietly but powerfully. When the palace announced that William would make a public statement, Catherine stood by his side, not out of obligation, but conviction. Her presence was a message in itself. The monarchy was not fractured. It was evolving. For every whisper of scandal, there was now an image of resilience. She understood the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The next words spoken would either heal the wound or tear it open forever. And as Catherine's quiet strength steadied him, William prepared to speak not as a son or brother, but as the future king. The world watched as Prince William stepped forward, his expression calm, but his voice sharp with conviction. For the first time, he spoke directly about loyalty, betrayal, and the meaning of family. But within his words, there was a warning, a message to one man in particular. Every syllable carried the weight of generations. Every pause echoed with history. The prince, once known for his quiet restraint, was about to redefine what it meant to lead not with silence, but with truth. The monarchy, for centuries a fortress of secrecy, was now forced into confrontation by one of its own. William's speech was framed not as an attack, but as a reflection, a declaration of values that separated duty from deceit. He began by speaking of legacy, of the responsibility that came with the crown, and of the sacrifices made to protect it. The monarchy, he said with unwavering authority, stands on the foundation of service and trust. When either is broken, the crown itself begins to tremble. To the untrained ear, it was an elegant reminder of royal duty. But to those who had followed the scandal, his meaning was unmistakable. Every line was a blade hidden in poetry, cutting through layers of pretense to reach the one man whose actions had endangered everything their family stood for. Though William never uttered Andrew's name, the subtext was undeniable. His reference to those who mistake privilege for purpose struck like a thunderclap. The message was clear. The monarchy's strength would no longer be held hostage by personal ambition or greed. The air inside the palace grew heavier with every sentence. William's words were not those of a prince seeking approval. They were the words of a man stepping into his destiny, determined to protect what remained of his family's dignity. Behind the carefully chosen phrases was a fire years in the making, one ignited by betrayal but fueled by hope. The reaction was immediate. Across the nation, millions were gripped by the rare sight of a royal-breaking tradition to speak from the heart. Some wept, others cheered. Newspapers described his tone as royal defiance, while commentators called it the dawn of a new monarchy. It wasn't just what he said, it was what he didn't. The silence between his words spoke louder than the speech itself. In those pauses, the public sensed both pain and power, a man torn between blood and duty, choosing the latter with unflinching resolve. For the first time in decades, the royal family appeared human, fractured, flawed, but fighting to endure. Inside the palace, however, the response was far less united. Senior royals sat in silence as they watched the broadcast. Some were proud, others uneasy. They knew William had crossed an invisible line, one his grandmother, the late Queen Elizabeth, had never dared to breach. The royal motto of never complain, never explain had been shattered, replaced by a new era of candor and confrontation. There were whispers that before delivering his statement, William had consulted documents from the Queen's private archives records of her own struggles during times of family scandal. It was said that among them were handwritten notes about duty above emotion, lessons she hoped her grandson would one day understand. That day had come. When the speech ended, The applause from the public was deafening, but behind closed doors, tension rippled through the royal corridors. For all the admiration William received, one person heard his words differently. To Andrew, the speech wasn't a call for integrity, it was an accusation. A public humiliation disguised as leadership. The very man who had been silenced by scandal now felt cornered by his own kin. William's courage, though celebrated by the world, had awoken something far more dangerous in his disgraced uncle, a bitterness that would not rest until it was unleashed. But while the public praised William's courage, behind the scenes Andrew was already plotting his retaliation. Humiliated and furious, Andrew refused to be silenced. If William wanted war, he would have it. What followed was a series of leaked documents, mysterious phone calls, and late-night statements from Andrew's allies that threatened to tear apart what remained of royal unity. The speech that was meant to heal had instead unleashed chaos, and Andrew was determined to make his brother's heir feel the full weight of his defiance. What began as whispers quickly evolved into a storm, one that threatened to drown the monarchy in scandal once more. Andrew's retaliation was calculated and merciless. He began reaching out to journalists known for their appetite for royal controversy, men and women who had built careers on exposing palace secrets. In shadowy corners and hushed conversations, he met with former palace staff, those once bound by silence, now eager to trade their memories for favor or fear. Slowly, information began to seep into the media, each leak more damaging than the last. Stories of mismanaged funds and hidden transactions tied to royal accounts surfaced, suggesting that the institution itself had been concealing its wealth through private channels. Though none of it could be proven, the timing was impeccable. The intention was clear: to erode William's moral high ground and turn the people's trust into suspicion. But the most dangerous blow came not from paperwork, but from a rumor. An anonymous source claimed that Andrew possessed a recording, a confession allegedly spoken by a senior royal about events long buried under royal discretion. No one knew if the recording was real, yet its mere existence was enough to send the palace into turmoil. Every aide, every advisor, every secretary became a potential leak. Phones were checked, emails deleted, and archives reviewed as panic spread behind the polished walls of Buckingham. For the first time, the monarchy wasn't fighting public criticism, it was fighting paranoia from within. The walls of loyalty that had protected them for generations were beginning to crumble. The chaos began taking its toll on King Charles. Already burdened by fragile health, the unrelenting stress began to show in his demeanor. Sources close to the king described moments of exhaustion and quiet despair, as though the betrayal of one son and the retaliation of another had fractured him beyond repair. To Charles, this was more than a family conflict. It was the collapse of everything he had spent his life preserving. And as his strength waned, the monarchy's vulnerability deepened. The crown, once a symbol of permanence, now seemed fragile, its foundation cracking under the strain of pride and vengeance. Meanwhile, William's silence returned, but this time, it wasn't out of fear or restraint. Those close to him knew what it meant. Behind that calm expression was resolve, cold and deliberate. He had watched Andrew manipulate headlines and twist narratives, but he had also learned from it. He wasn't going to respond through anger. He was going to end it with precision. His words to an advisor summed it all up. "This has gone far enough. I will end the chaos once and for all." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. But in the corridors of the palace, unease lingered. Every passing day brought new headlines, new speculations, new fractures within a family already stretched thin. No one could predict what would come next, or who would stand with whom, when the dust settled. The royal household was now divided not by rank or title, but by trust. And as the storm reached its peak, the unlikeliest of figures was about to emerge, someone whose loyalty would turn the tide in ways no one could have imagined. The palace was on edge, but no one expected the twist that was about to come from an unlikely royal ally. When chaos ruled the palace, one figure rose with unmatched authority: Princess Anne. Known for her bluntness and sense of duty, she had seen enough. As the royal family fractured, Anne decided it was time to confront Andrew herself and end his threats before they destroyed the monarchy forever. Her patience had always been a quiet strength, but now it hardened into resolve. The damage Andrew had caused wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. The monarchy wasn't merely a crown to her, it was her mother's life's work, and she would not let it crumble at the hands of pride and arrogance. Anne's decision to face Andrew was not made lightly. She had watched as the whispers turned into scandals, as the institution she had spent her life defending became the stage for deceit. Others urged diplomacy, but Anne understood that diplomacy had failed. This called for confrontation. When she arrived at Windsor to meet him, she carried not anger, but conviction. The conversation between them was brief but seismic. She looked her brother in the eye and delivered words that echoed through royal history. "You are not destroying what our mother built." That single sentence cut through the tension like steel. It wasn't a plea, it was a command, spoken not as a sister, but as a guardian of the crown. Andrew was unprepared for her fury. His usual defensiveness crumbled under the weight of her authority. For a moment, he stood in shocked silence, struggling to respond to the one person in the family whose courage he had never dared to test. But when his silence broke, it wasn't with apology. It was with rage. He accused her of betrayal, of siding with William and Charles to erase him. He claimed he was the scapegoat for the monarchy's deeper sins. Yet Anne did not flinch. Her composure never wavered. To her, his deflection only confirmed what she already knew, that his pride had blinded him to the chaos he'd unleashed. Word of Anne's. Confrontations spread quickly through the palace. Senior staff described it as the first time someone had dared to challenge Andrew so directly. It was a turning point, one that shifted the balance of power within the family. For too long, silence had allowed scandal to thrive. Now, accountability had finally spoken. The symbolism was undeniable. Anne, the most steadfast of royals, standing against her brother's rebellion to protect the very institution that defined their existence. Behind the scenes, William and Catherine learned of what had happened and knew it was time to stand beside her. For the first time since the turmoil began, the three of them, Anne, William and Catherine, presented a united front. That public unity became a message to the world. The monarchy was not divided, it was healing. Together, they appeared side by side at an official event soon after, their composure deliberate and their solidarity unmistakable. Insiders called it the moment the crown steadied itself. Even Andrew's closest allies, sensing the tide turning against him, began to retreat. Some withdrew their support entirely, fearful of being associated with a man now isolated by his own defiance. The whispers that had once surrounded him faded into the background, replaced by a silence that carried the weight of consequence. But Anne's confrontation did more than restore control. It exposed a truth long buried beneath royal decorum. Her actions had forced the family to face not only Andrew's betrayal, but the legacy of secrets that had allowed it to fester. The palace walls, once trembling under tension, now stood firm again, but not without scars. The monarchy had survived another storm, and its survival had come from within, from the one woman who had never sought the spotlight yet always carried its strength. But even as the family began to unite, a final secret surfaced, one that would change William's understanding of Andrew forever. It began with threats and ended with revelation. Hidden deep within royal archives was the truth Andrew never wanted exposed, not about William, but about himself. A secret that explained his desperation, his bitterness, and his downfall. When William discovered it, everything made sense. The endless defiance, the rage, the reckless need to regain control, it all stemmed from a truth Andrew had buried for decades. One that revealed just how far he had gone to manipulate the monarchy from within. What had begun as a family crisis was about to become a moment of reckoning that would define William's understanding of loyalty, power, and betrayal forever. The discovery came quietly. An aide, following William's orders to review years of internal correspondence and financial records, stumbled upon a series of letters, handwritten, sealed, and tucked away in a confidential royal file. They were addressed to figures of influence, politicians, and financiers, written by Andrew himself. In them, he had used the crown's prestige as leverage, promising favors, access, and influence in exchange for personal benefit. What shocked William most wasn't just the manipulation, it was how long it had gone on. The web stretched back decades, hidden behind layers of royal bureaucracy, quietly covered up by aides who feared scandal more than justice. These letters revealed a pattern of deception, not the work of a man fallen from grace, but of someone who had been quietly bending the system long before anyone dared question him. For years, Andrew's financial missteps and questionable alliances had been shielded by the monarchy's instinct for self-preservation. Each error quietly corrected, each debt discreetly settled. Palace insiders had known fragments of the truth, but never the whole picture. What William now held in his hands was not merely evidence, it was an indictment of everything the crown had done to protect its own at the expense of accountability. It wasn't just Andrew who had failed, it was the entire system that had enabled him. The realization struck William like a moral blow. His initial anger burned hot and fierce, but as he read through the final letter, that fury turned to something colder pity. He saw not a man consumed by ambition, but one destroyed by his own delusion. Andrew's bitterness, his threats, even his blackmail, it had all been rooted in the fear of exposure. He wasn't fighting for power, he was fighting to keep his secrets buried. The irony was brutal. The very institution he had endangered had protected him until the end, shielding him from the truth he could never face. And now, it fell upon William to decide what justice would look like, not for the public, but for the family his uncle had betrayed. A final meeting was called at the palace, quiet and unannounced. No media, no ceremony, just the royal bloodline gathered behind closed doors. Charles, pale and weary, spoke few words. Anne remained stoic, her gaze unflinching. William, holding the letters in his hand, finally confronted Andrew not with anger, but with resolve. There was no shouting, no threats, only a simple declaration that marked the end of an era. Andrew would be permanently exiled from royal life. There would be no reinstatement, no titles, no return. What the public would later see as a peaceful reconciliation was, in truth, a quiet act of removal, a final line drawn between redemption and disgrace. When it was over, the palace issued a short, carefully worded statement. It spoke of unity, of moving forward, of family solidarity. But within those walls, William stood in silence, the weight of his discovery pressing down like a crown made of lead. He looked at the sealed letters one last time before locking them away where few would ever find them again. The truth had been uncovered, but not shared, because William now understood something his grandmother had known all along. Silence can protect a family or bury it. And with that truth buried once, more beneath the palace walls, the monarchy survived, but it would never be the same again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.